Hi there, and this is all about units and setting up the units within the drawing so that you know exactly how the drawing is going to get put together. So we're going to type in the units command at the keyboard, UNITS, units, and then press enter, and we get this dialog box. Now this dialog box is going to tell us a lot about AutoCAD. We're going to first check the insertion scale here, right in the middle, and make sure it's set to millimeters. But before we move away from that, I'm going to open up this list so you can see what the choices are. And you can see that I'm highlighting inches at the moment, and then we've got all of these options from millimeters, centimeters, meters, and all the way down, and you can read all the way down to the amazing light years and things like that. So it's just incredible what you can draw in AutoCAD and the units that you can apply to your drawing. However, I'd like you to have a look at what's immediately above inches, and you'll notice that you can select unitless. And this is going to tell us a lot about AutoCAD. You see, AutoCAD is a database, and in order for AutoCAD to know how to draw the items on the screen, it's got to know how to interpret the numbers that you type in. So if you were to type in 500 or 200 or 600, it's got to know that you mean millimeters. Otherwise, it would have to assume that it was a unitless drawing. You could still draw it at 600 millimeters, but it wouldn't associate it with anything. It could be millimeters, or it could be light years, or anything in between. So we've got to make sure that we get that correct. Now the other thing it tells us is that this particular selection that you're making here is only mentioned once in the whole database, right at the beginning of the database. Okay, so if you've selected millimeters, it's basically saying all of the information that comes after this is in millimeters. Okay, so that when the size of an object is selected and then recorded in the database, it doesn't say 450 millimeters, it says 450, because it's already made that statement first of all at the top. All of the following is millimeters. Okay, so that saves a lot of space in the database, so it doesn't have to continually repeat the unit format that you're using. So not only does it save space, but it also makes the whole experience faster, because the size of the database is directly proportional to the speed that AutoCAD reads the database. So when you suddenly get a really big drawing, if you've just got it mentioned once at the top, you can fly through the dimensions. But if it was included with the dimensions all the way through, centimeters, 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 whatever, or light years, all the way through, of course, that's filling up the database and taking space up in your database, which is unnecessary. So once we've selected our insertion scale, do not change it halfway through, because AutoCAD doesn't rescale your drawing. If you've drawn in millimeters and then you suddenly change this to centimeters, it just assumes that the whole drawing is in centimeters. So you might have drawn 1 millimeter, and then suddenly you change over, and then that 1 becomes 1 centimeter. So that's obviously wrong, so don't do it. So you choose it and you stick to it. And my advice is that once you've chosen millimeters, for instance, for your drawings, then stick with millimeters for all of your drawings, so that you can easily use some of the drawings that you will make as symbols, and therefore the size of those drawings that you're going to be inserting into AutoCAD will still be a predictable size. Okay. The other thing that we need to do here is we need to look at the decimal precision. Okay, so in the top left hand corner here, it does say that we're using decimals. That's true, so we're using millimeters. And the precision here, the default precision, is set to 4 decimal places. Now you might say, okay, I'm an engineer, I will probably want 4 decimal places or maybe a few more for my precision. But if you're on a building site and your builder has got a JCB and a shovel, you might think that 4 decimal places for a millimeter is just a little bit too much. And I would agree with that. But what I'm going to suggest is this. What you need to do is you need to decide on the precision that you want and then add 2 decimal places to it and then choose that. So for instance, on a building site, I might say, half a millimeter is plenty enough. Okay, so if I said my piece of wood was 12.5 millimeters thick, okay, that's as far as I need to go with my timber sizes, and I can say that I've got 1 decimal place. But for a building site, here I would argue that you need to change this to 3 decimal places. Now the reason for that is error checking. So let's just say you were drawing your piece of timber and you wanted it to be 12.5 millimeters, 12.5, okay? But during the drawing process, it accidentally ended up as being 12.36. Now, if you had it rounded up to precisely 1 decimal place, it would actually round that up to 12.4. And you'd go, oh, that's 12.4. I need to maybe tweak that a little bit. Okay. But if you've got it set to 3 decimal places, you will see precisely that it says 12.360. And therefore you'll go, oh, that actually is nowhere near what I really meant. I'm going to have to redraw. So you've got this way of having self-error checking. And in fact, if you don't have any decimal places at all, if it rounds it up to the nearest millimeter, you can have all sorts of errors hiding underneath. And you need to know about those whilst you're drawing. So 3 decimal places is my favorite, and also for angles as well, 3 decimal places, because it's really easy to get to 11.25 because that's half of 22.5. And so my own preference is for 3 decimal places on both when I'm doing architectural or interior work, just to help me see if there's any errors creeping in. Okay, so once you've got all of that set up, you can then say OK. So down here, we're going to click OK. And that's our units set up. Okay, brilliant. So if you've got your drawing correctly set up, then that's great. Otherwise, just revisit that units command. And when you're ready, join me in video number 8, where we're going to learn how to draw some straight lines.